This is GCode Painter. It's a program that I wrote with Three.js on the web at ITP, Interactive Telecommunications Program at NYU, and I built it. It's based on another project I was working on that creates branching systems, and I realized I could use it to actually draw directly to GCode. So rather than talk too much about it, I'm just going to start making some stuff with it. Can control some of the attributes of of the brush up here. It's like I mostly stick to X because I'm a fan of the symmetrical shapes, but you can have it go in other directions as well. And you can get some pretty interesting shapes happening. If you make some adjustments here, say to the number of joints in the chain or the scale, you just have to hit Save Settings and then Rebuild. So it's a little bit shorter, but there are more joints. And you can see that the more joints means more detail in the line. And you can't see that there's a line now, but if I hit Draw Line, it's actually going to start creating that shape. And now the shape that's being drawn is taking the X and Y coordinates from the position of the end of that ball, and at the moment it looks like the camera is possibly not oriented in the correct direction, so I'm just going to refresh this and show you what it looks like just on the X coordinate, because that is lined up exactly. So if I start drawing a line now, you can see that the line that's being drawn is being drawn by the end of this joint chain. So you can see that every time it draws, it's drawing a little bit differently. It's because all of the joints are using a sine wave for their motion, and I'm basically adjusting, I'm animating up the size of that sine wave as it goes along. So I'm basically adding 0.001 for each cycle as it's going. So if I were to set it to 0.0001, it'll go slower, and you'll see that actually the lines will start to draw over themselves a little bit more closely. You can see that they're still progressing just a little bit less. Now, I'm saying line, but you can see it's a bunch of dots. It's just drawing to an array. Processing is actually drawing those dots to the screen. I can start over from scratch by hitting clear. If I want to see lines, I can put it in a loop, so it's drawing the same way. It's just doing it 10 times for every time it displays. I can set it to 100, and it'll go even faster. 1,000 goes faster, but if I go much more than that, let's see, if I say, I haven't even tried this, 10,000, I think it's going to just sit there for a while, and it might even crash. Let's see, oh, yep. So hopefully if I hit delete twice, it'll bring me back to 100, and I can start interacting with it again. So there we go. Alright, so I'm going to clear that. So as it's going, I can adjust certain settings, like the size setting of the wavelength. You can see it changes the shape, fairly drastically every time. As we go, if I start here, you can see if I just drag it up quickly, you can kind of see some of the cross sections it will make as it goes along. So if I just let it go, that size is going to keep on going up, and it's going to make all of these shapes eventually, and it kind of like does this nice swirling around, folding in on itself thing. It goes through different stages. There's a butterfly stage and sort of a chicken stage and a figure 8 stage, and it all varies a lot based on the Y2 value and the num value. The defaults that I found that I have set up here are make for some nice shapes. So when you're ready, so basically the way this works is it's drawing these lines, and what's going to happen is the makerbot is actually going to trace the same lines, but of course the makerbot is a three-dimensional tool, so there's a z-value. So in here it's like I have not built z-value into the tool just yet. So the z is something that you kind of have to guess at, and through a lot of trial and error I found that 0.35 was a value that worked pretty well. So basically every time the brush oscillates, it moves up 0.35 millimeters. or is that 3.5 millimeters? You know, I'm not actually sure how these units translate, to be totally honest. A lot of these numbers are just sort of a matter of trial and error. The scale value basically takes the pixels and scales it to 0.125, and so you know, the pixels will become, I think they're centimeters. So you know, the numbers, the defaults here will actually lead to you being able to print out a model that will look all right. So let's see. One thing that I have started to play around with is the num and y2 values, because you know, it's like this shape's quite nice. Like, it'll make a nice model. But if I turn down the y2 again and turn up the num, I'm going to get more detailed shapes, and it does get a little tricky. But if I save those settings, see, it's a little bit tricky because it's quite small now. But if I clear that, and I'm going to turn the loop up, you can see it's like kind of a nice cauliflower shape, and it's drawing a bit fast actually. I can just tell because I've used it a bit. But you can see that the amount that it's offsetting, like each line, the amount that it's offsetting now, when it prints on the makerbot, should be just fine. In other words, every oscillation should go on top of the other layer, and it will create a structure. You might even be able to push it a little bit farther, like maybe 0.003. Again, this is like strictly the result of trial and error. See, probably too much. Alright, so you can see as the counter goes up, the profile changes, and you get really interesting and sort of unexpected shapes. Unexpected because I don't have a 3D visualizer built into this program yet, but that is something that would be pretty easy to do, and something that I would do if there was any interest in that in the future. So that's basically some of the basic functionality of the GCode Painter.